With a large chunk of Kickstarter work out of the way, it's time to tackle another large project. Moving out of the space that I filmed YouTube videos in for 6 years. This is a big win for us guys. I'm finally moving out of my mom's basement. Today's the first day of moving into the new office space, and we're going to do a bunch of stuff that isn't critical to video making. We started this process December 1st, over 4 months ago. The merch stuff was definitely taking up the most room in the house, and it wasn't required to make videos, so it got moved first. Curtis, this van has thousands of dollars of Miniac merch and packing material in it. Are you up to the task of transporting it?
Yes, sir!
All of the first round stuff of moving in the building. This is what it's looking like right now. This is all of the shipping and merch stuff that we have so far. It might not be obvious, but having to ship and fulfill all your own merch and product is kind of like, it's like a logistical puzzle you have to solve, because the more things you add and the more things you sell, the more packaging considerations you need to have. Is someone gonna order a Duchess? Okay, well that's easy enough, but what if they want a Duchess and a hoodie? Or a hoodie and a cutting mat, or a hat and a cutting mat. All of those things need to have boxes to cover those situations. So you have tons of packaging and it takes up tons of space. Like look at these rolls of bubble wrap, dude. This is like 4 feet in diameter and it like comes up to like my nipples. It's absolutely crazy. That's kind of the thing with packing materials. It's supposed to take up a lot of space, but unfortunately that means that it takes up a lot of space in the area that you care about. Right now, Amber is off at Menards getting more shelves because we have too few. And then when she comes back, we're gonna start sorting things, kind of figuring out where stuff goes, getting all that settled. With some more storage in the room, we could start sorting out some shipping supplies and merch. So we bought this label maker to do like adult things with it, like labeling what t-shirt size is on all of the racks. Well, we can do way funner things with this. Like patches. The printer, of course. The occasional wall. This pile of quarters that someone left here. That should about do it. With an attempt at organization underway, I could work on some quality of life improvements. Amber currently ships all of our merch on a very sad table. That isn't supposed to be a rocking chair, but apparently it is. So we picked up a much nicer table from Uline. It's much sturdier, taller for standing at, and has a lot of nice shipping related features. Listen to the sound the screw makes when I push it in. Straight out of a horror movie. Toss a standing mat in front of there and almost OSHA would be proud. Okay, the shipping area is done for now. It's not even remotely close to being organized, but we need to turn our attention elsewhere and make progress. So let's do some low voltage work. Paul, a patron of mine, offered up his expertise in this area, and I was incredibly grateful for it. We started with running Ethernet to the various areas in the office where I expected to need internet, like where I plan to edit videos or where I plan to run my live streams. He also installed a little half rack in the shipping room, and now all I want to do is buy all sorts of rack mountable gear that I don't need. Rack mountable router? Yes. Rack mountable network attached storage? Yes, please. Rack mountable fridge? Are you kidding me, dude? Someone let the cat out of the bag. After the Ethernet, we also ran some XLR and HDMI from a location where I plan to have my streaming PC. The ports terminated in the ceiling so the cables could drop right down where they needed to be, keeping them far away from the ground and also being a potential tripping hazard. We tried to use the proper cables inside the drywall, such as active, shielded options to limit crosstalk from neighboring cables. A little bit ago, I hired an electrician to come out and install outlets in the ceiling as well. I am irrationally excited about these ports, and I don't know why. Look at this, they're even like labeled and stuff? Let's take a break from the office move to hear about this video's sponsor.
MTM 3D is a company specializing in 3D printing as a service, but also has some of their own concepts available for purchase right now on a Kickstarter campaign. Inspired by the likes of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone from films like Predator and Rambo, these jungle-dwelling, sweaty hunks of xeno-hunting killers come in STL format, pre-supported, ready for your 3D print beds. There are 14 other great characters tucked away in stretch goals for the campaign, so keep your eyes peeled for a cheeky Dolph Lundgren or a Wesley Snipes. The coolest part of this campaign is that the miniatures can also be optionally 3D printed by MTM 3D. Instead of only getting STLs, you can get physical copies of the miniatures if you're not savvy with a 3D printer. MTM 3D actually got their start in the industry by 3D printing models for a Spanish website called Goblin Trader, meaning they built up some 3D printing chops prior to this campaign. You can find the campaign linked in the description of this video. Thanks for supporting YouTubers MTM 3D. Now back to our video. While the low voltage work was being completed, some fun shipments arrived. A company in Washington called Bandpass Design sent me a massively sexy board game table. This is the Dresden Battleground. This model is sized to accommodate for playing miniature war games, and boy, is it hot. Setup went very smooth with one friend to help out. There are 8 gaming stations at this behemoth, and each station has a token storage area, a card slot, a drink holder, and a dice box you share with your neighbor. Each dice box has a lid that is magnetized for easy removal. The pit surface area is 6 foot by 4 foot to accommodate games like 40K and Age of Sigmar. Lastly, the table comes with a play surface insert that is double-sided with velvet on one side and cushioned speed cloth on the other. You can install little pegs in the table so the surface is level with the armrests. That way you could have like a puzzle going on underneath while you played a game above if you wanted. Dresden sent me this table for free but are not sponsoring this video. We were actually able to play some games on the table and I really enjoyed the experience. Can't wait to try out more. If you want to check out the Dresden, I'll have it linked in the description below.
Some camera nerds might be curious about how we intend to rig lights above this massive table, and not to worry, camera nerds, I have the solution.
I actually didn't have the solution, Paul did. My original plan was to leverage the drop ceiling grid. I'd install one of these scissor mount pieces, hook a light stand, and attach any device I wanted to the stand. While I was planning on adding additional drop ceiling wire to wherever I added gear, this felt like a bad idea. With enough time and weight, the grid might warp or fail. The much better idea that Paul had started by installing a unistrut above the metal beams in the ceiling. Unistrut is a piece of sturdy metal rectangular stock with holes in it, essentially. Each unistrut is U-bolted to the metal beam so they don't shift around. Then I could attach SteelTech fittings to the unistrut with bolts and nuts. These fittings are originally intended for railings and whatnot, but work fantastically for camera cages as well. With the flange fittings bolted down, we could install conduit to start building out the cage with a variety of fittings. Part of the reason I prefer SteelTech is because the pieces are secured with 2 set screws, which means it's non-permanent, so things can shift around if need be. Also, it's adequately strong for my weight ranges, and there's a little bit of wiggle room. I don't need this cage to be a perfect square, so the set screws allow an easier setup because each piece of conduit doesn't need to be precisely cut or threaded, etc. With a couple of ceiling tile holes cut, this massive camera cage is complete, so now I have somewhere to securely attach my camera gear, like this.
Some of you might be concerned about effectively 8 set screws holding the entire weight of this camera cage. And it's important to mention a couple things. 1, I'm only gonna put about 20 pounds of camera gear up here. And 2, it's never really gonna change. No one's gonna touch things up there, no one's gonna adjust anything up there, so not a lot of manhandling and movement is gonna go on. That is until we film Drunk Mini Painting and either John or I are up in the ceiling. But that's a problem for future Scott.
Paul also polished off a smaller, lower rig for the painting area and a single bar for the podcast area.
The keen observer might notice that the conduit I used for my camera cage is a little bit thinner than the one that I used for my gaming cage. And the reason that is because I bought this stuff a long time ago. And a long time ago, I only knew of one brand that made these kind of fittings, and that was the Klee fittings. And it seems like those ones are more widely available in the UK and Europe, so they're very expensive compared to the SteelTech varieties that I could find in Lowe's here in the States. They were 2 times, sometimes even 3 times less expensive. So if you're in the States or if you're in UK, buy accordingly. So we didn't get a lot of work done today because we were dealing with Comcast, setting up internet here and also maintaining it in our house. And so we wanted to feel like we did at least something, so we came back to the office space to set up the chairs for the podcast. And we bought our little doggies.
With the increase in space, it was time for the podcast to have its own official setup, and that started with some recliners, but that isn't the only improvement.
Time for another fun shipment.
This beautiful sign was made by Jonathan, a fan of the podcast and also a capable carpenter. He also made these sexy coasters as well. I took our TUP logo and simplified it so that Jonathan could cut it out on his CNC and also do the rest of the work.
Best part of this sign is that he installed LEDs in it. Y'all ready for this? Ooh.
Huge shout out to Jonathan. If you want to see any of his stuff, I'll have his Instagram linked below. When I get around to it, I'll install the TUP sign right in the middle of the 2 chairs on the wall behind us. After I came back from Adepticon, we finished the moving out process by tearing down my old set, lights, and whatnot, and making an absolute mess of things in the office, getting it all over there. The last thing we'll accomplish in this video is putting up some new set walls.
Dude, this is not the time.
I want each set area I'm shooting in to feel like a unique spot, so I picked up some fake wall textures from a home supply store and had Amber paint them in the colors that I preferred. With the walls painted and moved over to the office, we could start installing them. This was pretty straightforward. Finding studs, measuring out places to cut electrical outlet holes, and then installing the walls with screws. Not too hard. That finally brings us to the present.
There's a lot of work left to do, and it's intimidating. I want to be able to organize everything effectively, and I feel like I need to take a class on organization. I want to do everything in the perfect way, but that decision alone kind of causes some analysis paralysis. So I need to both make progress, but also make sure that the progress is somewhat worthwhile. I couldn't have gotten this far without the help of my wonderful friends, Dan, Curtis, Paul, and Alex, and of course my beautiful wife, Amber. So thank you guys for your time and your expertise. All right, let's finish this video up. If you guys liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you guys want to support the channel, there are a number of ways you can do that, both free and not free, and they're all described down in the description below, namely a Patreon campaign with a bunch of fun rewards, like a Discord server where you and I can hang out any day of the week and chat about your miniature painting projects, or you can ask me about how long it's taking me to move into this office. Why am I inviting that? And yeah, that'll do it. Subscribe or die! And most importantly, don't forget to paint my minis!